Relationships as pure transaction and manipulation, it sounds extreme, but what if modern dating is becoming exactly that? Today, we're exploring a controversial new book that's making waves by suggesting love and loyalty can be reduced to a formula of sensations.
That's interesting because it reminds me of social exchange theory in psychology, though his take is much more, let's say, pragmatic. The raw honesty in this text is striking. While the author's views are controversial, there's something compelling about how he breaks down human behavior into these tactical elements.
You know what fascinates me most? The author's background in street culture has led him to view relationships through this lens of power dynamics and survival strategies. He describes everything as a form of currency, even emotional connections. Well, let's dive into his core argument about what he calls sensation testing. He suggests that by systematically removing different forms of attention and support, you can measure true loyalty.
That's quite a clinical approach to understanding human connection, though I suppose it touches on something real about how convenience can mask genuine feelings.
And here's where it gets really interesting. He breaks down these specific sensation techniques designed to create emotional responses. It's almost like a psychological playbook.
The manipulation aspect is troubling, but some of his observations about human behavior patterns seem valid. What surprised you most about his analysis?
Well, his detailed breakdown of how people maintain multiple emotional connections really caught my attention. He suggests that in our digital age, people are essentially running parallel relationships for different types of validation.
That's actually supported by some recent studies showing how social media has changed relationship dynamics. About 60% of young adults admit to maintaining backup romantic prospects online.
You know what's fascinating? His section on what he calls reversed mind mapping. This idea that people often say the opposite of what they mean, testing boundaries and seeking specific reactions.
The psychology behind that links to some interesting research about attachment styles and relationship testing behaviors.
He spends considerable time discussing how crisis and drama serve as tools for maintaining emotional engagement. According to his observations, some people deliberately create chaos to keep partners invested.
That reminds me of the drama triangle concept in psychology, where people cycle through roles of victim, rescuer, and persecutor.
The author's perspective on technology's role is particularly striking. He suggests that social media and dating apps have amplified these manipulation patterns by making it easier to maintain multiple personas.
Well, recent studies do show that about 45% of people in relationships actively hide their online activities from their partners.
You know what really stands out? His analysis of how different types of attention serve as forms of payment in relationships. He breaks down emotional currency into these specific categories of validation.
That's a pretty cynical view, though it does align with some behavioral economics theories about social capital.
The book concludes with this call for self-development, but even that gets twisted into a strategy for gaining power over others. It's like he can't escape this adversarial view of relationships.
So, what do you think are the broader implications for modern dating culture?
Well, while his tactical approach is problematic, he does raise important questions about authenticity in our increasingly digital world. How do we maintain genuine connections when everything can be so carefully curated and controlled?
That's perhaps the most valuable takeaway, not his specific advice, but the questions it raises about modern relationships.
Looking ahead, I think this book might be a wake-up call about how we approach connection in the digital age. While his methods are extreme, his observations about how technology enables emotional manipulation are worth considering.
That's a thoughtful way to frame it, taking the insights while rejecting the manipulation.
Thank you all for joining us in examining these challenging ideas. Remember, understanding relationship dynamics is valuable, but the goal should be creating authentic connections, not winning power games.